Hello and welcome. I'm going to review this Fender Super Champ X2, and this review is going to be very specific because I watched all the reviews out there and I'm going to tell you a few things that nobody tells you about these amplifiers. Number one, this is a very inexpensive Fender tube amp. I picked this one up used for $200 and it was in what could easily be considered like new condition. This is a small 10-inch amp, 15 watt. It's got 6V6. So you've got two 6V6 power tubes, one 12AX7 preamp tube, and a little bit of that classic Fender tone, okay? There's some good and some bad, and I'm gonna get right into that with this amplifier. First of all, the good price point. The 10-inch speaker means that that's gonna be good. Like if you like a smaller 10-inch speaker, like in a Princeton or something like that, better for home use. You can get it driven a little bit more, and you can get the speaker moving a little bit more with a 10-inch speaker without killing yourself like a 12-inch speaker sometimes does. So in its purest form, meaning on channel 1 with no effects turned on, no reverb, nothing, it's very much giving you that Fender tone. It's very much a poor man's Princeton or a poor man's Hot Rod Deluxe type of thing. And it makes for a good little pedal platform, though there is no effects loop, and you should consider that if deciding on that. I'm going to tell you right now, this review is going to be a soaringly good review. That being said, I'm going to tell you also right now the real ultra crappy things about this amplifier. Okay, number one, the FX. They are trash. And when I say they are trash, I mean they are unusable trash. So, the only thing you can do with this thing is you can dial up a little reverb. So there's a little reverb. And that's okay. Like, you know, it's not a great digital reverb. It's just not. So it loses a little bit of that right there. So if you've got a reverb pedal you're planning to use, that's going to be okay. But to me though, if you're going to have any effect on an amplifier, if you're going to have one effect, let it be a good reverb, and this doesn't have it because this has reverb, reverb with delay, chorus, chorus with delay, chorus with reverb, tremolo with this mat. None of that shit works, okay? I'm just gonna say it, none of it works, and when I say none of it works, I mean none of it works literally, and I'm gonna demonstrate to you why. Anything that includes the tap tempo. So let's put on a tap tempo effect, for instance. I'm gonna go on to tremolo, turn the effect way up so you can hear it. Okay, so look, now you can hear the you know. So I'm going to tap tempo it, slow it way down. I slowed the tap tempo way down. Now I'm going to fool around and I'm going to go to another effect, and I'm going to go back to the same effect I was just at. It does not remember the tap tempo. This also, I have updated the firmware. This does not remember your tap tempo ever. So if you dial in a sound that you like with a little delay, a little reverb, whatever, at the right, you know, the right amount of tempo, as soon as you change that just to try to tweak or feel another sound out, it's gone. You have to redial it back in. And it's even worse than that. So let's say I go onto my second channel and I'm gonna do some overdriven sounds, and I'm on my clean channel and I just want a little. So here's what I want. I want a little bit of reverb and a little delay. Now, I've got a lot more of the effects turned up right now so that it's a little bit for the video sakes, but here's the trick. I go now to my high gain channel and I tune in just the amount and just the amount of effect I want. And then I switch back to this channel. I'm on my clean again. Just by going back, it's different again. The way these effects are done, it's like layered on top, and so it completely removes the ability to use this amplifier in a situation where you may change channels or sounds. If you go play somewhere in a gig or a little thing with friends with this amplifier, you have to basically get that one sound. There is no switching between the sounds unless you're turning these effects off. Because going back and forth to these effects is rubbish, as they say. It's terrible. It will be way too much delay and reverb, even though it was set the same as it was 5 minutes ago when you used it, and you have to re-creep back up on that tone to get it. That being said, the only thing these are good for is if you're at home or if you're practicing or if you're going to record or something, you can tease this into sounding pretty good. The delay, the chorus, the reverb, you can tease it in to sound pretty good, but you just can't switch back and forth from it because, again, even just the fact that it loses its tap tempo, who the frick wants that? And to me, every time the tap tempo changes, it always switches to bump, 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 bump. I don't want that. The hell do I want? Bump, 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 bump. Do I want a delay to go bump, 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 bump? No. So the fact that that doesn't remember anything, I either just shut it off completely, then it becomes a sweet little amp, or I can go on just a little bit of reverb and just the littlest bit, no tap tempo, no delay on there, you know, and then. Now it's a good amp. Okay, so now we're going to get into the parts of this amplifier that I love and the parts of this amplifier that make it one of my favorite amplifiers I own. I've got just a teeny bit of reverb on there, and another thing is I can just shut this effects off. I'm going to be playing in a few minutes here at a big warehouse. I don't need reverb. There's natural reverb, okay? So I don't even need reverb. The thing I like about this is when you crank it, it delivers, okay? There's very few amps out there, especially cheap tube amps, that when you crank it to 10, deliver the goods, okay? And you know what I'm saying, where the amp isn't vibrating itself loose, the amp isn't rattling and falling apart and sounding like trash, okay? My typical amp is a Mesa Boogie. When I crank that thing up, I gotta roll off 90% of the bass. I have to take the bass way down because it's too much and it floods the sound and the speakers going and farting out. With this, that's not the case, okay? So now let's get back into the good stuff of this. Forget the FX. In fact, I'm gonna shut those straight off. Forget the FX adjust. EQ, it's simple. I've got a bass and a treble, and I'm going to talk more about those in a minute. And I've got a clean channel. The clean channel is good. When I crank that clean channel up to 10, it's not quite what happens when you crank a Hot Rod Deluxe up to 10, meaning, you know, but you do get a nice overdriven sound, more similar to a Champ. I'll see if I can record that after I'm finished describing the amp because I don't know if I want to do it sitting this close to it right now. But it does give you a very nice sound, okay? But channel 1 for your clean, this is going to be where you're going to pedal it, okay? Simple as that. Because it doesn't overdrive as good as other amps or as good as Fender amps on channel 1. However, this one's got more than one channel, right? So the nice thing about this is the voicings on this. It's got 16 voicings. They are actually usable, and they actually work, and they're a lot of fun, okay? So, you don't need a lot of gain on this amplifier either. Even at low volumes, you don't need a lot of gain. There's a couple of real great sounds in here that are like a pushed Prince's on. That's just thick, fat, and warm. And if we crank it up, that is such a nice little sound right there. That I think is voicing number 6, which is, I believe, it's literally called Push to Princeton. And the speaker sounds so, it's got that Fender warmth and that bassiness to it, even though it's a 10. And the thing about this is, if I turn the volume on this, I'm going to call it the voice channel. If I turn the volume on this amplifier all the way up to 10, it sounds fantastic, okay? Most of the reviews I saw on this amp didn't talk about that, where the amp itself just transforms into this beautiful thing that fills the room and the whole amp is vibrating like a son of a bitch. Nobody said that because they're just playing like, you know, they're pretending it's a studio amp. So in the studio, I can dial in whatever tones. Yeah, you can do that. But this is an amp you can actually let rip and then it shows its true colors. The day I got this amp, I was out of love with it in 5 minutes because I tried to dial in myself a little delay with a little nice smooth chorusing, and it was round, and it was way over the top, and it was completely out of balance, and I haven't had an amp that bad since the 90s, back in like the Johnson Millennium days, where you set up this tone, and then you go back and forth from it, and it's just completely like you wasted your time setting it. It was nuts, you know? Seeing this, and using this will turn you off to this amplifier in 5 minutes. And I guarantee you that's why I bought it for $200 from a guy that bought it brand new and then was completely cold on it 5 minutes later. It wasn't until the next day that I came to a place like this where I'm gonna let it rip, and then I just went, oh shit, shut this off, and then you can fall in love. This just has this typical standard Fender musical instrument speaker in the back, and a lot of people talk about changing the speaker, stuff like that. I love the speaker that's in this, and I'm gonna tell you why. When it is cranked to 10, that little speaker and the 15 watts of power overdriving, everything in it makes it become an animal. You can crank up the treble and the bass to 10, and you can put this, I'm gonna put it on voicing number 15, which is like a 90s, you know, 90s rock and roll. So that was cranked on 10, volume on 10, treble and bass on 10. I can tell you right now that sounded killer. It wasn't too loud, I didn't just blow out my ears, and the amp resonated, I got feedback, but with everything on 10, the speaker was not farting out, it just sounded thick and wonderful, and it filled the room as good as any super driven tube amp I've ever used in my life. And when you play a lead couple notes out of there, it cleans up, the speaker's able to handle those single notes, I'm not gonna say better, but it handles single notes differently than it handles, you know, when the speaker's in there, and if you looked at it, I'm sure it's just a blur of movement. So when you start playing those little fills or those lead lines, it's like you switch the solo button on your $2,000 amplifier, because those notes have the ability to cut through. And when you solo, when you play those fills, when you're doing those voicings, that cuts through and is significantly louder than when you're doing your full-blown chugga-chugga rhythm, okay? That alone makes this one of my favorite amps, okay? Why is it one of my favorite amps? It was $200. Secondly, it's like 24 pounds. I don't have to kill myself. I mean, the amp I typically use is a 112 30 watt Mesa. I think that amp is 45 pounds, something like that. There's a big difference. There's a big damn difference, you know? I mean, carrying that thing around is a pain. Carrying this around, it's about the same as my guitar in a hard shell case, you know? It's not bad at all. Cranking this thing like I just did, you can definitely gig with it. You can definitely play with your drummer and stuff like that. And it's nice because the sound you're gonna get out of it is it really pushed. And that's what a lot of people I find are missing, where they've got a nice amplifier or they got a crappy amplifier, but they're just using it at a volume where it sounds good, and that's why they have to have two 12s. That's why, because they've got a solid state amp or whatever. This, if you hear this 10-inch speaker on full-blown roar, I mean, it comes to life in such a manner where you're like, I want that amplifier really bad, okay? That's what's so nice about this. Now, another thing I saw about this amplifier that nobody talked about was it doing some kind of metal tone, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's a Fender blackface amp. Metal tones are stupid, but obviously I'm wearing a guitar that's not exactly country and western, right? So can it do a metal tone? Absolutely 100%, and I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, any great tube amp typically can do hard rock and stuff like that, but you gotta push the shit out of them. So I have a Hot Rod DeVille, 410s, 60 watts. You stick that sucker up and you let that thing rip, and you get a killer metal tone out of it. I mean, just chunk, 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 chunk. You can sound like John frickin' Pertucci if you want to, but to do it, you gotta push the shit out of it, and those are typically so damn loud at that volume that it's hard to manage. This, on the voicings that are, you know, the higher voice, like on like, that was 15, the voice I was just on, and I'm gonna tell you. I mean, you can sound like Megadeth, Metallica, whatever you want, if you want to. And it wasn't cranked right there because I was on volume 4. But the more you crank it, the harder that chunk, 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 chug sound gets, and the harder the amp works. And so I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm in Vegas, and sometimes I play in places that are not exactly the greatest. Sometimes I play in places that are dirty and on dirt floors and stuff like this. And taking an amplifier out that I spent $200 on, turning it loose, and not having to worry about it is really brilliant. So let me tell you something. Look for one of these amps. Look for one of these amps. If you need a tube amp that's gonna rip. The ones that I've usually gone to in this price range are like a PV Classic 30, turn that son of a bitch up, let it rip. They're usually about 350 bucks, and they soar and sing, you know. If you can find a cheap Mesa Boogie, something like an F30, you know, those things will do it as well. But this really does it. And I do call this a poor man's Princeton, you know, but a Princeton's 1,100 bucks. So this is 1/5 that cost. I mean, you can't kind of go wrong. The only thing I would say I would do to this amplifier, or that I would need, keeping in mind that I have no active electronics, I'm plugged straight into the amplifier, there's no pedals, is when you're cranking this thing to 10, you probably would benefit from a noise gate, obviously. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of work on, you're muting your strings a lot and using your volume a lot, but that's what I do. I don't use a noise gate. I'm literally just the guy that plugs straight into that thing and just lets it rip, because that's when it gets the best personality for me, all right? So look, this isn't a bad amp. It's absolutely not a bad amp. It's got bad effects? No, it's got shitty, horrible, the worst effects ever. They're absolutely trash. I think had Fender not even put those in and just gave it a decent digital reverb, that's it, this amp would be one of their more popular amps. Instead, it's not one of their more popular amps, it's one of their unpopular amps. But it shouldn't be. So I'm telling you, I think it's a win.